不知不觉就已经在赛场上度过6个年头了。
从那一年的巅峰到低谷之后，我其实学会了很多道理。
我的职业生涯和其他一线老将可能不太一样，这么多个赛季以来，我一直在到处尝试寻找证明自己的机会。
在我看来，帮助年轻队员成长和适应这个大环境，是作为一名老将的责任之一。
我也是 LPL 最早的选手之一。如果哪一天大家在赛场上看不到 RBJ 这个 ID 了，希望和我相关的回忆能带给你们欢乐。
就我自己来说，其实我会把每一场比赛都想象成是自己的最后一场。
我希望离开这个赛场之前，能给每个支持过我们的人一个交代。
我还是希望这最后一场能尽量来得晚一些。
但是在最紧急的关头，别忘了，我就在这里。
Welcome back to the LPL. We thought that we had all of our coverage done with 10 weeks of gameplay, but that was not enough. We needed more. There wasn't enough kills, there wasn't enough action, there wasn't enough to determine who our best teams in the league are, so we added one whole extra week of gameplay. Welcome back, everyone. It's week 11. I'm Dom. Joining me here on this wonderful new soundstage is Indiana Frosker and Black. How you doing?
I'm really excited. It was kind of emotional a little bit to watch the veterans say goodbye to our Shanghai studio, because if you can't notice, we're in our LCK LPL studio for the rest of the week, as well as a lot of playoffs.
Yeah, and so we will be covering the games from this new location, but as we said, it's week 11, and we got to talk about everything that's going on in the LPL, because there's still a lot that needs to be determined. The standings have not been completely solidified yet, which is crazy, because we still need 11 weeks to figure it out with all 14 of these teams.
I'm going to call it 10.5. Now, I really want to focus right now on the Eastern Conference. We'll get to the Western Conference in a second. Now, as you can see, a lot of things have been locked up. We know who the top 4 teams will be heading into the playoff gauntlet. Invictus Gaming getting that crucial semifinal bye, but RNG and JD Gaming can swap positions. Sunny, of course, are locked into 4th place, but the difference between RNG taking 2nd and taking 3rd is being on the Invictus side of the bracket.
And that could very well become a death side of the bracket, because as we take a look a little bit more closely at the Western side, there are still a lot of standings that can be determined over the next few days. There's a single game left to be played in the East, but in the West, we've got 4 more matches.
And these are the 2 teams that I want you to hone in on. It's FunPlus Phoenix versus Snake. 8-10, 7-10. FPX have a game in hand, and they're playing their last series of their 2019 summer split today against Edward Gaming. Snake will play Team WE right after this, and they will also play Edward Gaming tomorrow. So technically, ball is in Snake's court. They have more opportunities to leapfrog into that 4th place spot, but FPX can hold their ground, take destiny into their own hands, and beat Edward Gaming today.
Of course, they have to start that with a win if they want to try and take that victory. Let's take a look at today's matches so that we can see what's going to happen, because as you said, FPX, they're going to be playing in our first matchup today against Edward Gaming to try to reclaim that destiny. Just after that, Snake are going to be trying to chase them for that 4th place spot, but standing in the way, the martyr themselves, Team WE, one of the greatest LPL teams of 2017, now has a chance to make a name for themselves in our next matchup against Snake.
And don't be fooled, Team WE aren't going to be the only non-pushover. Edward Gaming still have a lot on the line. They can actually move up and pass TOP and try to escape that death side of the bracket. So let's go ahead and take a look at the playoff bracket if it were to lock today. Now we have a couple of indicators here. Firstly, red is not locked. The only team that is in danger of falling out of playoffs is FunPlus Phoenix, and the team that can move past them is Snake Esports. Blue can switch with blue, and green can switch with green. And as you can see, there is a possibility that if both RNG hold on to 2nd place and Edward Gaming also move up into 2nd place, you have an EDG RNG, Invictus Gaming, bracket side of death.
And that is absolutely going to be so exciting to see how those teams try to determine, because again, only one of those teams will be able to advance to the finals. Of course, in the East Round 1 and the West Round 1, you can see that the third place for each of those conferences will come in with a 1-game victory seed. That will give them a bit more of an advantage coming into that best of 5, as they only needed to win 2 games to advance to the next stage, whereas everyone else gets the round bye of being able to skip that best of 5 entirely and go further on into the bracket. But now let's turn our attention to this next matchup, FPX versus Edward Gaming, in our first game of the day. This is a very important match. As you said, this is a chance for FPX to take fate into their own hands if they want to try to take this victory. It's against Edward Gaming, though. They've done it before. How are they going to do it again?
It's also against an Edward Gaming that are also hungry. It's not like EDG are already locked into their standings. We just showed you the playoff bracket. They can move, so they also want to win. Normally, at this point in the playoffs, you could maybe give it to FPX and be like, but the top teams, the IGs, the RNGs, the EDGs, they don't have anything to play for anymore. And that's not correct. EDG have had a very up and down split so far, falling as far down as 4th, possibly 5th sometimes into the standings. And so they're right back onto their rise, and they want to hit that momentum going into playoffs. And for me, it starts with Scout. Because if we talk about tumultuous rises, the volatility of the mid-jungle matchup between FPX and EDG is where I really want to hone in.
And this is where we can turn our attention towards the intricacies of that mid-jungle matchup to set it out. Because as you said, Scout, he's the player that a lot of international fans might have really taken note of at Rift Rivals when he had some huge pop-off performances. But it hasn't all been sunshine and roses for this guy. He's going up against Cool, who's also been having some pop-off moments of his own.
And it's on very similar champion pools. Right now, you can see that Cool has certainly been popping off on Zoe. It's his most played champion, but it's also in tandem with their newest jungler in addition in Alex. Now, again, I don't think that this is where FPX must win the map, but it's simply that you know exactly what to expect from Gimgoon and LWX and Crisp in your side lanes, that Alex and Cool are simply kind of the cherry on top. They just need to tighten it up to be more consistent, and they must hold ground against the likes of Scout.
And playing against that volatility is going to be quite the challenge, because when Scout pops off, it's with plays like this. The blind catch onto Rookie, who was looking for that flank in that massive late game play. Of course, his Zoe is something a lot of fans take note of, but he's still been having some excellent performances on Talia and even Azir.
And this type of window, we were debating whether Scout was going to be the best mid laner in the LPL. Rookie still holds on to it, but Scout on his best day can surpass that. Now, behind Scout, you have the likes of Clearlove as well as Haro. Edward Gaming have been experimenting more with Clearlove, bringing him back into the roster because they're having a lot of shot calling issues, but Haro is much more explosive. He plays things like the Kindred, like the Camille, even a more offensive and aggressive Gragas to say we're starting the fights right here, right now, and I can be the primary carry.
And again, to be clear, this isn't something that's just going to be determined by how well the mid and jungle play. There's still plenty of opportunity for upset and decision-making in those side lanes. We just expect them to play a lot more consistently. Gimgoon versus Ray in the top lane. We're expecting perhaps a tank versus bruiser matchup. iBoy versus LWX. Well, that is where we're going to see a lot of action.
Yeah, it is about who gets to that bottom lane. Now, LWX is known as the shotgun in the LPL. You know that, I know that. You guys need to know that at home, because this guy plays a lot of Kai'Sa, a lot of Ezreal, and when we say shotgun, it's because he likes to get up close and personal, and that can either be to the detriment of his team or to a lot of success. Now, facing across from iBoy and Mako, maybe don't want to do that a little bit.
It's a little bit risky. I mean, Mako is just coming back from Asian Games 2018, where he was able to take a gold medal and play alongside Uzi on stage, but we were hearing a little bit that the communication between Uzi and Mako couldn't quite match the par of the communication between Uzi and Ming. So the big hope is now that he's back with his home team, with his roster, that's not going to be a problem.
But the communication has been the problem for Edward Gaming. That's why they tried to bring Clearlove back into the roster. The late game decision making for EDG are exactly why they're not locked. But let's take a look at the other side. It's Gimgoon, Alex, Cool, LWX, the shotgun of the LPL, and Crisp.
And we'll see how this roster matches up against the dynasty of Edward Gaming, the winningest team in the history of the LPL. And we very well could be seeing something new with Edward Gaming's late performance, as it's Ray Haro coming into the jungle as he's rounding out his first year in the LPL, Scout, iBoy, and Mako.
So Edward Gaming, they're investing into the future. They're trying to ramp themselves up. They want to get that ticket to Worlds. They do have a challenging road still ahead of them because they need to take that second place spot if they want to try to avoid either RNG or Invictus Gaming. But right now it's pick your poison, balls in your court. Where's it going to land?
It's so interesting because they don't get to choose who their opponents are. That comes down to the the RNG JD matchup to determine the final seeding for which bracket. They can only choose how they want to try to avoid Invictus Gaming or Rogue Warriors on their own side.
And again, reminder still, because some people would say, but you know, if Edward Gaming just sit where they are and RNG win, then you dodge both RNG and Invictus Gaming. That said, every single place that you move up in the LPL does mean you're one best of 5 closer. So Edward Gaming finishing 3rd versus finishing 2nd, you're only 10 games away from Worlds.
我们输掉了很多，很可惜。在现在这个情势下，我们竞争非常激烈。如果这场比赛我们能够赢下 EDG， 我认为我们在季后赛的队伍里面也是有一席之地。我们会继续加油。
Cool, the new veteran to bring some. I hate to be the David Freak Turley on this one, to bring some cool-headed plays to his team, really has been the ice to the fire that is FPX. But surprisingly, it's when we see him get fired up and match the flames of LWX and Gimgoon alongside Alex joining the roster that FPX have looked at their best, not when they play slow and measured.
For me, this game is a game of puppet masters, and I want people to pay attention to the player screens as we get closer into some of these big 5v5s or these very crucial game of inches moments in this series. Look at this guy on your screen, Mako. Look at what he's saying, how intense he is with his team, how he's coordinating them, who is leading the charge. And then likewise, as you look to FPX and a team fight, glance down to Cool's portrait. Watch what's happening, because we've been in that stadium with Cool, and you can hear him above the crowd. He is fast, he is loud, he is commanding them, and he is trying to organize FPX into that playoff run.
It is non-stop communication out of the FPX roster. Whether or not it's efficient and effective communication is going to be the challenge playing up against EDG, and how these fights break out in the first place. Because again, we expect the bottom lane to be very volatile. EDG's strategy since the beginning of time has been to play towards that bottom lane, send the jungler, unlock the mid laner to roam down to that bottom half, try to take first break with that bottom tier 1 turret. LWX is the kind of guy who will fight back, so knowing that mid jungle is so important, could we perhaps see FPX say, okay, we'll take the roam, we'll challenge that bottom lane and try to meet you, not in the mid and jungle, but taking our mid and jungle down bottom.
That's exactly what I expect coming out of this matchup. It's kind of been the go-to for a lot of the LPL teams, and I think that was actually set by our top veteran. You know, if you have Invictus Gaming, RNG, and EDG as kind of your big 3, and then Rogue Warriors joining them as the big 4, everything that those elite teams have in common are superstar ADCs and wanting to get resources down to them. So it sets the meta for the region, and the other lesser teams have had to react. If EDG and RNG are constantly going to go bottom, then we must also go bottom.
And as we get closer and closer to patch 8.16 and playoffs, the return of tanks and those massive team fights is a threat ever looming overhead, so more and more incentive to look towards those bottom lane hypercarries to try and break those tanks apart. But now, we've made it. It's picks and bans for Game 1 between FPX and EDG, and look at that, they've done their homework. FPX immediately turning towards that bottom lane. Varus Rakan ban, getting rid of Scout Zoe, and then a first pick Alistar. But that's not going to stop EDG as they go straight to the Gragas Kai'Sa.
And there's a lot of denial picks and there's some flex picks. First and foremost, I want to grab hold of the Alistar. It's Chris' second most played champion, so a huge comfort pick for them. We know that LWX and Chris like to play a kill-oriented bot lane, so I already love that. They then throw on top of it a Camille. So they're giving all in on the hard engage. On the other side, Edward Gaming went for the clever flex pick. We saw Ming really pull out the Gragas support at the Asia Games. It's kind of been a staple for EDG. Mako was the first one to do it competitively in the LPL. Actually, no, I believe he was the second one to do it. And then the denial pick of Kai'Sa away from LWX. It's been his go-to, most played ADC, and so EDG give the respect and put it in the hands of iBoy.
And we still even get to see Mako return to his very well-known Tom Kench. Such a powerful protection pick. And iBoy with a laugh and a smile, and that says, great, I get the dive Kai'Sa and the Devour to pull me out of sticky situations.
And I feel like the showcase of the Camille really forced Edward Gaming's hand to kind of pull the rug from underneath their flex pick. They had the priority pick of the Gragas. They say, you don't know if this is jungle, you don't know if it's top, you don't know if it's support. But because they see the hard engage factor of now Camille and Alistar, they say, okay, it's not going to the support position. Yeah. We need the Tom Kench to keep our hyper carry alive.
And this is now where we get to see EDG start to take some momentum in this pick and ban by getting rid of LWX's hyper carries in the bottom lane. The Varus already banned away by FPX on that first side, and now that Xayah to try to follow up on that. So still plenty of opportunity for him to look down towards it. We've seen some return of Tristana. LWX loves himself some late game carries. I see the only way that LWX can really be kind of wacky is if he decides to take something like Kog'Maw, which we have seen before, and he has a propensity towards the champion, but likely going to be seeing that as real down there.
He is also one of the mage players of our marksman position, so if he wants to really throw it back and grab hold of something like a Swain, that's also an opportunity for him. I love the ban of the Galio. Again, you see the Camille, they had to pick the Cho'Gath. They didn't go for the Galio Camille into the same rotation. They want to try to get some sort of counter pick, or at least a little bit more information from EDG, as it looks like they're going to save counter pick for Scout for last. But don't blame them for trying. I like Cho'Gath. In my personal opinion, I actually think Cho'Gath is the most broken champion in the LPL right now, and a lot of it is because of his innate Baron control as well as his laning phase. But as we get into game, I'll go back onto that Cho'Gath point because I just think he's way too unstoppable in this region.
And the opportunity to try and upset that will be by focusing the top lane.
Oh boy!
Vayne is locked in by LWX. Currently, it's been played twice in the LPL, and
Cassiopeia?
LWX is going to try to take a run towards it. Ryze is locked in for cool, very strong, stable pick in the mid lane, but like you said, with Scout getting that counter, he might try to look for a carry to take into it. Syndra's what the current hover is, and it's a great way to shut down a Vayne if she ends up becoming too big.
So I wanted the Cassiopeia simply because it is the traditional counter to Ryze, at least still in the early levels. There's some debate on whether now she can still be a counter to Ryze because he can itemize into Banshee Veil so much easier. But Syndra, of course, has gotten some recent love on some of the new patches, but more importantly, EDG's composition didn't have any hard engage. They were effectively looking at a Cass or an Olaf running in, and that was about it. By grabbing Syndra as opposed to Cassiopeia, you now have a long-range stun engagement, so it just helps round out some of their tools on the comp, which is why I agree with you, Scout, I agree with you, Nofe, that was the better call.
It still almost seems as though EDG are trying to focus on we want to run at you composition, and best case scenario, you run back into us, playing FPX's style against them, knowing that FPX has a bit of a propensity to try to go for the blind all in, whether it's a good idea or not.
But the terrifying thing is trying to run into FPX's composition because they have Cho'Gath and Ryze is really detrimental. If you ever fall behind, or if we ever go to a late game scenario, it's going to come down to picture perfect execution. And frankly, I think FPX's composition is so much easier to execute than Edward Gaming.
It has been an uphill battle for EDG to try and reclaim the throne at the top of the LPL. It's been a long time for them since they've sat at the top, as the year of the dog has brought many new changes, FPX namely being one of them, to provide a lot of challenge to these teams with their hot and fiery, chaotic style. But as we get ready to load onto the Rift, this is the battle for 4th place. This is FPX's last chance to take fate into their own hands. If they lose this series here and we see Snake take the following 2, then FPX are out and done until 2019, whereas Edward Gaming, they're fighting for seeding. They're fighting for the opportunity to look towards some of those top-tier teams and challenge them elsewhere in playoffs.
And it's all about that guy on your screen right in the middle there, Cool, the veteran. Since 2013, when he had his go at Faker on the world stage, he was shamed back to China. He went away, disappeared for a while. He's now come back. He's bounced around a couple of teams, but FPX, he wants to be the fire there. We talk about how he's got to give them a cool head. We can make the puns all day, but ultimately he needs to be the leader, and he needs to show that his experience is worth something and how it translates on the map.
How has he grown, and how can he help his team grow? Because he's playing against one of the most experienced players in the LPL, one of the most winningest players in the LPL. You just saw him right there, Mako. For Team EDG has won more titles than just about anyone else right now. And Clearlove might be the only one who gives him a run for his money, but even then, Clearlove's not playing on this lineup right now.
We've said it time and time again. This year of the LPL is about the next chapter. Is this going to be the chapter of Uzi, where one of our veterans finally does ascend to godhood and take his rightful place among legends, or is this going to be about the new talent? The fact that Mako is a veteran that is very recently kind of been bred and born to lead this type of squad, which has brand new members across it. The fact that Mako and Scout are the 2 most veteran members of this EDG squad since the departure of Clearlove, and on the other side, the exact same story for FPX. Yeah, you've got the legacy of Gimgoon with Xenic Storm, but he never made it connect, not in Korea and not in the LPL, and now it's being led by Cool. So Turning this page, what is the LPL going to become? Is this them rising to be the best region in the world with brand new talent led by our veterans? Or are we going to continue to struggle and fall behind when it matters most?
This transitionary chapter for both our players and the team as the deciding match is coming up. Looks like we're running into a few delays as we load onto the Rift for this game. We'll try to get them solved as quickly as possible, because even on the pro stage, sometimes the game bugs out and we try to get into this.
We can kind of expand a conversation, especially because EDG are taking place. Now, I didn't quite spot it as much in this draft phase, but I do want to kind of highlight trends that EDG fall into, and we saw it at Asia Games. Asia Games got to pick what coach they wanted. They had the coaching staff of RNG, both Kesman Hart, but their primary stage coach was Aaron, formerly of EDG. Now, Nofei is the head coach behind Edward Gaming when they go onto stage, but if you look into their practice rooms, if you look into the organization, Aaron is still a very strong presence and was recognized by being that stand-on coach when attending Asia Games for Team China. Now, Team China had a lot of problems in Asia Games when it came to their drafting, particularly how they use and wait for counter picks and how they utilize flex picks. It feels like continuously EDG, instead of grabbing power picks for themselves and recognizing what they're good at, it's almost the arrogance to say that we can play anything, so we're just going to try to deny you, which technically sounds like the better strategy, but with EDG falling so far down the standings and consistently having poor drafts, throw it out. You have some of the best players in the LPL. Just get them what they're good at and stop trying to play to the other team.
And this is where we get the contrast with FPX. They're not a team that tries to deny or counterpick or flex. They've picked something aggressive and strong and fast. Vayne in the bottom lane is going to provide a lot of scaling and a lot of damage for LWX. You've got yourself a nice safe rise for Cool in the mid lane with the flexibility to try and pop off if he manages to pick up a few kills. But then the Camille in the jungle. It's not going to be a calm game from Alex. We've seen level 2, level 3 ganks from Camille's all across the LPL. So FPX have got the flexibility to play however they want in this matchup, whereas Team EDG, like we said, their composition is a bit harder to execute.
Yeah, and they win for those flex picks, and suddenly now the Gragas ends up in the top side. And it's not like Gragas top is a terrible pick, but I feel like it does better and better places. So again, this is EDG kind of hamstringing themselves because they're trying to overcomplicate and overthink the draft when just grab what you're good at. EDG were so successful for so long in the LPL because they did just have better players in every position. As the LPL continues to grow, 14 to 16 to 18 to 20 teams by 2020, EDG are losing their grip on having the top talent in every single position. We talk about super teams in the LPL, that's Invictus Gaming and that's RNG, and that's why Edward Gaming are no longer in that discussion. So stop doing that. Change the drafting phase. You can no longer get away with it because you're no longer just better than the guy that you're facing.
It's only been 2 years since we've really seen the big changes to the roster for Edward Gaming, the departure of Deft and Pawn, and the remake alongside iBoy, with Scout in the mid lane, Zet appearing to cover that brief period before iBoy turned 17. Of course, we did get to see him join the roster a year ago and immediately ascend to the world stage. So again, it's EDG focusing on the future, focusing on development. But with all of that all of their eyes looking forward, somebody has to look at the now and look at the competition facing across from them today and in the playoffs just next week.
Do want to quickly give an update. So it was a lobby boom. The lobby is now being remade. Same champion picks, same champion bans, and we are about to get into game.
Yes, that will be happening as quick as we can. And hopefully the players will be able to remember the order and get it right back in. We can try to read it back to them and get them through it as fast as possible.
Spoiler alert, I think it's Gragas, Olaf, Syndra.
Yeah, exactly.
Kaisa, and Tom Kench.
Pretty strong composition. I'm seeing a lot of smiles out of the EDG roster. iBoy is looking really happy on stage today, and that's a pretty scary thing because he's a player like Uzi who, when he's feeling it, he's a very emotional player. He pops off aggressively. He gets in the face of your opponents. He looks for the outplays.
He gets to play next to a gold medalist, Dom.
He does. Doesn't get the gold medal himself, though.
When was the last time you got to swim with Michael Phelps?
There was that one time in band camp, actually.
No, I do agree with you. When the confidence is behind players like iBoy, who is very, what's the word I'm going to use? I want to just say it. He's a cocky guy.
He's a cocky player.
He's a bit of a shit talker.
He really is.
He can throw down some smack, and he definitely has the confidence to know that he's one of the best AD carries in the LPL. In fact, if you ask him, he is the best AD carry in the LPL.
And it's funny that he always says that Even when he plays up against Uzi and says, I'm better than you, I can beat you, and then Uzi beats him in lane by 20 CS, kills him under turret. Love it. It's such a strong personality for him to try and keep that. And it always contrasts so much with how Mako is so calm and always in control of the situation, whereas AD Carry is the type of player who has that inner flame, who has that inner passion.
Mako reminds me a lot of Bjergsen, actually, in the sense that it felt like for the North American LCS, Bjergsen, when he transferred over, it was kind of his coming of age, and we really got to watch Bjergsen develop, grow up, and mature under the NALCS spotlight and kind of the weight of that title and that crown for so long. Mako, in a very similar position, you know, came into the LPL spotlight, had this veteran before him, and then we've watched him really craft his image, craft his skill set, and grow up on this stage. And then also the fact that Bjergsen and Mako are both very, what's the way to phrase it? Not PR, but very mature.
Controlled.
They recognize kind of their importance and their responsibility to the team and to that spotlight. And so with someone like iBoy, who's kind of a bit like Doublelift, you know, he can kind of pop off, he goes this way, he goes that way. Mako and Bjergsen a bit more reserved, a bit more controlled, and a bit more recognizing of kind of the influence that they have.
And perhaps that's where we see the communication challenges for Edward Gaming, as they do, again, try to invest in the future. They're looking at bringing this team to Worlds in 2018 and hopefully trying to mimic that performance in 2019, as they are the franchise team and one of the largest organizations in the LPL by a country mile. And we're still looking to see other players on the roster either follow suit in Mako's footsteps or diverge and follow iBoys, because you can't have two heads for the snake. You have to decide one or the other, and I think that's where we see the disconnects, is when iBoy pops off and we see Scout get to have wild and crazy performances versus the calm, cool control that EDG are so known for in that mid game.
Yeah, don't let that yawn fool you. Scout is a wild animal. That guy cannot be contained or controlled.
I would love to see Mako just go through like some gritty physical training thing where a PT, a personal trainer, stands behind him and is like, lift, run, do this obstacle course, so we can finally see Mako angry. Because that's something I don't think we've seen in a very long time. We've not really get to see his passion.
I think he does. He just gets a little bit short when you look at some of those interviews. Mako, of course, one of the only captains that after a loss would come out and give the team interview, so again, taking that responsibility very seriously. On the other side, though, we do now have an opportunity to talk kind of at length about FPX. They're one of our newer organizations. They took the spot over from Newbie, which is why they retained the Newbie bottom lane previously in LWX and Crisp. Game Goon as well, then joining the squad from Game Talents as well as EPA. He was formerly of Xenix Storm, if you go all the way back, you know, played with the likes of Coco and Swift, some of those great names that then did do great things in Korea. Gimgoon never really had that big moment for himself, comes over to the LPL, comes in, gets relegated, gets back promoted, relegated again, popping around on rosters, but
and the crazy thing is, it's never been his skill that's been in question when he has been relegated on these teams. It's been how he has played with his teams and how his teams play around him. But finally, with this roster on FPX, it seems like he's found a home. As we prepare to load onto the Rift, the delay is over, and before us is Game 1 of FunPlus Phoenix versus Edward Gaming. Hiding behind the sign does not hide your voice.
Of course, the team fan clubs making their appearance and their presence felt. A huge thank you to the Chongqing Snake Pit for giving us this stage, since we are no longer in our Shanghai Battle Arena. So, bit of different colors. Don't see the gold of Snake, the red and blue now, but you can still see a lot of their signature.
Trying to keep it neutral for all of the teams that are playing in this venue, as looks like we're starting off onto the Rift. Again, this is the fight for the final playoff spot. FPX and Snake are both neck and neck. And FPX in their last game of 2018 get the chance to go here against EDG. who are already set and grouped up. Haro, Mako, and iBoy alongside Scout stepping up.
And I do want to take note of Mako starting the, what is it, Glacial Augment as opposed to the Unsealed Spellbook, as a trap has now been set, so I'll hold my breath for a second.
Ooh, Alex shows himself as he steps up, but Crisp with the knockup. iBoy's Ignite. He's forced to back away. Crisp eating some autos, gets slowed by the undertow and dies. First blood to EDG Mako.
And Mako with the cheeky thumbs up there, like, good try, guys, but you didn't quite set the trap correctly. Yes, I understand the theory behind it. You've got the Alistar. He hits a massive multi-man pulverize, but ultimately the damage wasn't in position. They didn't have the numbers. They weren't able to follow up and burst them out, and it just kind of seemed like a wonky decision from FPX. They see that all 5 members of EDG are there. Why go in?
And that's going to make that lane already pretty scary for iBoy and Mako. Though the kill does go to the support, that means iBoy and Mako get early lane control. And as Crisp makes his way back into lane without Ignite and with Hex Flash, LWX is going to have a real tough time down here.
And I do want to quickly point at the mini-map, as we have a ping that goes down onto Alex, is that a... what do I want to call it? Zombie ward is actually sitting on the backside of the red buff. You also now have Cho'Gath trying to move in and get vision onto this because they want to make sure that Alex doesn't get 3-buffed, but I actually think he's too slow on the rotation. He went for the Scuttle Crab, didn't try to push his luck and move in to grab that red, and it should be a very easy rotation for Haro to secure 3 buffs.
He's gone for the delayed blue into Gromp now. And again, looking towards the volatility of that mid-jungle matchup, we expect top to go pretty consistent between Gimgoon and Ray, and bottom to do the same, though iBoy is certainly going to try his hardest to upset that matchup. But it's how Haro and Scout versus Alex and Cool break open these lanes and enable those eventual rotations into the mid game that will define the tempo of this matchup, as Haro finds himself with an early advantage. As you said, going for the 3-buff over Alex, so EDG already starting off on the correct footing.
Which means that Alex now has an opportunity that since he can't go for the buffs and trying to match it, in fact, Scout even placing a very cheeky early river ward to make sure that Camille doesn't investigate into that, you could just have Camille team up with Ryze. You know that Syndra's going to be incredibly powerful at level 6 with her ultimate, so try to get it done levels 1 through 5. Look for those lane ganks, try to bounce the mid wave, get it centered back, and try to set up a kill with the hard CC, which is why Scout is respecting that and holding the cleanse.
I mean, you can even see Mako stepping up to clear out the Scryer's Bloom, take control of that Scuttle Crab along with Haro, as recall was just canceled by Cool, and Haro can't quite be that disrespectful. And even a defensive bottom lane now from iBoy and Mako as they let the wave push back into them. They know that Alex could try to reset these lanes. They're just going to catch these minions and let Haro snowball his advantage in the jungle.
Now, Dom, I'm going to give you the spotlight for a second because I know you're a big Kai'Sa player.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm going to ask you the one true question. Who is better, Space Vayne or OG Vayne?
Ooh, well, they do different things, right? The Plasma takes a little bit longer to come online and gives you more mobility in team fights, whereas actual Vayne gives you more sustained damage over the course of the fights, just through the true silver bolts. It depends what you want. As Alex, there's the sneaky gank that we were looking for. Duck's under vision, but look who's right behind him. Haro's in the river.
Trying to find the opening for that Glacial Augment. In fact, I think actually Mako's trying to bait Crisp a little bit. You know, disengage from iBoy saying, Alistar, come get her.
Ooh, Haro sitting on top of a ward. Pings it and steps out of the jungle. Still hasn't seen Alex just yet and sees Cool backing away. So he's playing real careful here.
And that was the key thing that you pointed out. It's the fact that he doesn't know where Alex is. So if the Ryze is trying to pincer, he would then assume that Camille would be nearby and he'd be looking at a 2v1 burst scenario. So I like the respect giving to Haro. He then also hits the Scryer's Bloom to check underneath him for the Camille, clears the ward, and then moves to the Raptor camp.
It is a delayed steal from Haro, but it is safe. It's as we expect from EDG. They don't want to take any undue risks and play that controlled style. But Scout, he's walking up, eats himself a rune prison as Haro was thinking of following up for the gank and allowing him to take lane control. But it's constant patrolling the bottom half of the map from EDG, making sure iBoy is safe to keep this lane, CS advantage over LWX and continue to try and exploit that, while Scout looks to do the same in that mid lane.
And the thing is is that if you're Edward Gaming and you know that your match, and again, EDG want to win this, they want to take second spot from TOP, is against FPX, you can just decide, okay, FPX are a brawling 5v5 oriented team. They're usually about the grouped up team fights. They like to play hyper carries, a lot of Kai'Sa, a lot of Vayne. So let's get our own hyper carry. Let's just create kind of a protection composition for that hyper carry with backline dive threat with Olaf, and let's just meet them in the 5v5. As far as EDG is concerned, create the safety net alongside the bottom of the map with all of these control wards, with complete control of the river on bot side and the dragon, and just scale up with LWX. They just assume that iBoy is better.
And that's a very safe assumption because most 9 out of 10 analysts agree that iBoy is
the 10th?
second best AD carry in the league. Look, we've had these conversations all split as to who is the second best AD carry. First is undisputed, but it's such a fun conversation when you start breaking it down into the nitty-gritty of champions and composition. But Haro with the early Predator, he's going to race down through the bottom lane, bringing Scout at level 6, and even Mako following alongside that sweeper.
And it's the difference of a Cinder level 6 versus a Rise level 6.
Yeah.
What's he gonna do? Realm Warp on top of me? I'll just blow him up. It's then also capitalizing on a lot of the control and the investment that Edward Gaming have put on that bottom side of the map to keep the Kai'Sa safe. So FPX and EDG are just saying, you're gonna scale up anyway, we're just gonna slowly bleed you out, take these micro advantages, and even if it was a 50-50 at mid and late game, we're probably just gonna beat you anyway. So ball's in FPX's court. They need to do something to break this, and now that they do have the Realm Warp, I feel like it should be with Rise and Camille.
As you said, they're slowly hemorrhaging out objectives as the red buff was taken away by EDG. Still see a slight CS advantage for iBoy. Scout in the mid lane doing close to the same as he's continuing to keep river control, but now this is the first big neutral objective that's going to be taken off of a result from this pressure, the Mountain Dragon for EDG.
Now that looks so small, but I really want to go back to that interaction. They condemn Mako against the wall, the Tom Kench, the one who can give the safety. Then there's a clear opening where Alistar could look to go in and find the combo. You know, maybe Vayne gets a full rotation through Silverbolts. You could get some really good damage on Mako. But simply because they don't have vision about where Haro was, who was taking the Mountain Dragon, since EDG have control of that river, they didn't go. Like, if you've watched any FPX game, they always go on that. LWX and Crisp are so arrogant in how they lane. They always try to go for these all-in kills. They priority picked an Alistar, but they are so afraid.
But that's where we have to talk about the weight of this matchup. Not only are they playing against EDG, the winningest team in the history of the LPL, they're playing what could potentially be their last best of 3 of 2018. If they lose this series, it's all up to Snake to take a single victory, as they do have the point head-to-head over FPX to claim that 4th place spot.
I agree, I understand. I just feel that if FPX are ever going to be successful, throw out the rulebook, burn it if you will, and just play your style.
Even
be
better,
that crazy brawler.
Use the rulebook as a weapon, because it's a pretty hefty packet of pages, and try to bring it back against EDG. As we have always seen EDG struggle in really chaotic situations. They are a team that thrives off of control, off of tempo, off of constantly maintaining vision and taking one thing after the next, getting that timer and being 3 minutes ahead. But when they live and play in the moment, they're just as good as any other team, down to that mechanical skill.
Yep, they have a playbook, and they have very deep plays, and like you said, it's not just the 3 minutes, it's 5 minutes, it's 7 minutes out in advance. If you play a slow, measured game, that's exactly the pocket that EDG want to be in, and they beat anyone there. If RNG try to do that against EDG, if Invictus Gaming do that against EDG, they will lose.
There's the engage. I don't know if they've spotted all off mid, but they're going in, and Mako gets chunked down to half. iBoy. He's got a lot of damage. BF Sword, double longsworders. He's going for Storm Razors first, but Mako's pushing up to the wave. Haro is looking to come down, but Alex is shadowing underneath him at the Krug camp to defend this turret. But slowly but surely, this turret's going to start taking some damage.
And classic Edward Gaming, stylistically, they have marooned LWX and Crisp, the bottom side of the map, completely isolated from everything else, and they're just playing a pressure game, slow and steady. It's increasing in the CS leads, and it may look towards a dive, as you can even see that Scout's starting to rotate.
Now Realm Warp is ready for cool. He's ducked out of that mid lane. Not sure if he's been spotted by EDG just yet, but this is such a difficult style to play against. We've all been in those solo queue games where you're getting shoved into your turret, wave after wave after wave. You call for the jungler, but he's busy dealing with the mid lane. He's busy dealing with the jungle. It's up to somebody else to try to break that apart, and that somebody else might be Gimgoon as he's hovering down in the mid lane.
It's also Crisp. You can see that they want to break it.
That's the Realm Warp, but immediately it gets canceled, but they're going to dive onto Scout. Alex follows up. He's sidestepping as best he can. He's got no flash, but finally gets chased and will end up dying. Mako and iBoy collapse in. Haro looking to follow through. Crisp denying as much as he can while they're running it out, but iBoy lands damage onto Cool, forced to get out of the rupture, and iBoy goes back in. He's looking for Cool to slow the target selection. They find it, Room Prison or not. They do leave Haro to the Wolves as Crisp forces him to flash back, and iBoy, he's got himself some damage. He's got himself some chase potential. Finally scares FPX back.
And the ultimate thing is that LWX didn't turn and try to join that fight at all. Only just now was he starting to walk up the top side of the river. Now, he doesn't have TP available. It's just now going to come off of cooldown, but I have a feeling that he thought that maybe the did he just think that it was over, that he didn't need to rotate? I want to get another look at the replay and check what he's doing.
Oh,
okay.
That's stun.
The Realm Warp being canceled out. Yeah, LWX, he just sat down there with the minions. He's like, you guys got that, right? Right? Guys?
It was supposed to be a kill onto one target and then leave, but Crisp, with no flash, wasn't able to catch up to Mako and knock him out of that abyssal voyage. And from there, it was 4 versus 3.
I did like the fact that FPX did try to break the Rubik's Cube of Edward Gaming. They're saying, okay, we can't just sit in our lanes. We can't just bleed out. We need to do something. It's Gimgoon who actually gets involved, when it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I like the fact that they are trying to break the mold. Unfortunately, it backfired.
Well, there are a couple of ways to deal with the Rubik's Cube. First of all, you can try to peel the stickers off.
Smash it.
You can smash it. Another one is to learn one single maneuver that moves 2 pieces consistently. You constantly keep on trying that to maneuver the piece around. But right now, FPX, they're still experimenting. They're not finding the way to open this up. And now it's EDG with a 1,700 gold lead. This pressure game is starting to balloon, and it's 90 seconds to the next Mountain Dragon.
I need to focus in on where that gold lead has landed in terms of itemization, and check out Kai'Sa's first buy. Now, Blade of the Rune King has just been completed for Vayne, but in terms of power spike, not worth. Gives her a lot of power in the 1v1 because of the sustain.
Now
and
there's an engaged bottom. Abyssal Void try to get Haro down there. Crisp with the save, but iBoy, he's going mano a mano in against LWX and Alex. He will end up dying to LWX, but Crisp, he's fighting on our screen right now, will get chased in by Mako and Scout. Gives his life to try to defend it, but Alex keeps on going, but goes a bit too far, as there's the delayed Abyssal Voyage. Haro and Mako landing slow after slow, and that Shogoth makes a tasty morsel. A double kill for Mako as he's 3-0-2.
Yeah, the captain of Edward Gaming. It felt like we followed that fight from his perspective. The observers completely ignoring everything that was happening bottom, which, by the way, was multiple teleports,
Yes.
as well as Vayne going ham. So Blade of the Rune King's there, Alex is there, iBoy must give respect, isn't able to find the 1v1. Oh, that sucks.
Beautiful cast from Ray to knock LWX back in
That was so
under
good.
the turret.
Oh, thank you, observers.
He just follows up on that. But still, as you said, following that from Mako's perspective, he saw that fight was happening bottom, got collapsed upon by Crisp trying to deny the Abyssal Voyage, but just picked up the accessory kill. By keeping Crisp separated from the wall, separated from Cool. And this is the difference. This is exactly what we talked about in the pregame. Look at Haro and Scout. 1-0-4, 1-1-2. Compare that to Alex. 0-2-2 to 0-1-0. It's the mid jungle that's dictating the pace of this matchup.
And Deficio has said it time and time again during the ULCS playoffs that mid jungle is just too important right now for the meta. Now, we are an 8-15 versus 8-16, some slight differences in terms of some of these matchups, but ultimately, this has always been the primary pivot point of the map, and you can't let it collapse, especially not against Edward Gaming. EDG didn't even break a sweat in this early game. You know, maybe a bit of a tense moment as we have a bit of a circus in the mid lane as Gimgoon makes a rotation, but ultimately, EDG have just been coloring within the lines. They held the lanes, they got major CS discrepancies and differences between a lot of their lanes, and they're just stacking the items in gold.
And that's so important to talk about, that Gimgoon has been participating in these fights. It's not just been mid jungle and bottom versus bottom. Gimgoon walking down to the mid lane to try and take part of that second blood, even trying to get into the second fight. But even with the assistance of the top laner, EDG are able to play around that pressure. Still might be a little bit risky as they step up towards the red buff, and LWX with his Blade of the Ruined King forces Mako out. Cool will go down as Gimgoon collapses yet again without his teleport. They find themselves another kill as they're able to chase it down. Scout is locked away, and that's EDG biting off way too much more than they can chew.
Yeah, Shu is on the other foot now. Some interesting communication from EDG across map. It looked like, where is iBoy, where is Scout? And I found iBoy.
caught by the slow. Oh,
Good use of the
beautiful
ult.
killer instinct. Wow, positions himself over the wall so he doesn't even have to take an unsafe route back into lane. But in all of the chaos, FPX find an opening and equalize these mountain dragons. They're still down 3,000 gold, but if EDG make mistakes like that, FPX is a team that can happily capitalize.
And again, check where Edward Gaming are. The fact that Scout he's trying to hide in Fog of War, I believe, to try to get them to overcommit and checking where Cool is, but the damage follow-up wasn't there. They do manage to trade 1-for-1, but iBoy is now still bottom by the Dragon Pit, not finding a way into this fight, and Ray is very slow to the rotation, whereas Gimgoon, you said it before, again, participating with his team. He was on the first gank that went south, he was on the second gank, and it went much better.
Even on the third gank that we just saw on our screen as 16.5 minutes in, 1-1 and 2. FPX, they're finding small windows, small openings, and only when EDG are making mistakes are they able to find it. And this is that communication that we were talking about. iBoy wasn't grouped up with Mako and Haro. Scout, like you said, trying to play the vision game, wasn't grouped up with Mako and Haro. He did find the kill, but just not able to do anything with it. So EDG, those are the communication errors that are holding this team back, this team of superstars, from being potentially one of the best teams in the league, if not the world. But now, Rift Herald is back up, and EDG, they're going to try and convert their pressure. They took the bottom tier 1 with iBoy, and now they're looking to rotate him top.
Yeah, but look at the question mark pings that are happening on Ray. Ray doesn't have TP. He actually moved into bottom side river. Now, Edward Gaming had an opportunity with clearing that vision ward where they could have planted their feet and said, we're ready to team fight right now. We actually have grouped up as 5, so we're going to force this. Instead,
they find Cool.
What? The Observer's having whiplash, and it's giving me whiplash.
Yeah, we're not quite sure why Cool decided to step into this, as there were the Mia pings, but with Cool dead, that means EDG easily get to convert this pressure into that Rift Herald. As we were talking about, this is a team that sets up minutes in advance. They took the bottom tier 1 despite taking the bad kill trade and the dragon trade, but now they're looking to convert that into a tier 1 turret elsewhere.
As much as I want to give credit to Edward Gaming for that, that frankly just looked like Cool out of position, because Ray shouldn't have been there. Scout was rotating up. He had to come back. He was lucky that Scout paid attention to him.
Plays towards bottom side because he's got Gimgoon behind the red buff, but Ray was in between Gimgoon and Cool and just got there first.
They watched him walk there. They knew he was on the bottom side of the map. It's fine.
And that's
happens.
the top tier 1 broken. EDG, again, they're not a team that just sets up and takes things through omniscient pressure. They're a team that also capitalizes on mistakes exceptionally well. If you find yourself out of position, EDG is very good at taking more than just a kill.
And a lot of that is being centered around this Syndra pick. It's been multiple stuns and a lot of that upfront burst damage. So Scout, not necessarily on the highest mobility of champions, but definitely on the primary playmaker alongside that Gragas for Edward Gaming. So Rift Herald goes down mid. It's probably going to be the tower, although they are pulling a teleport, so maybe FPX want to try to fight this?
LWX is getting in. He's teleported down to the tier 2. Shelly charges. Realm Warp gets Cool onto the side, but he's split from his team. The turret breaks down, but this is a cannon wave. LWX still working on that wave clear. Cool steps up, but iBoy dodges back. Bobbing and weaving, but the stun finds him. They don't follow up and find the kill, but this turret is chunked down so low, and Ray still sitting on the side for the flank.
Yep, hiding in Fog of War, knowing that they don't have information where he is, and then making the call. Here comes Gimgoon.
Yeah, they've managed to find Haro and Scout over the wall, but that power unleashed is so strong. Alex is dead already, and now it's 5 versus 4. If the siege didn't work a moment ago, it's got a huge advantage now.
It just feels like Syndra right now is a massive cannon, and EDG are just moving her through.
That's the cast, but Gimgoon and Crisp are in front. A huge stun onto 2. Cool gets some good damage, but it's still not enough, and they still can't break the turret. That's the danger of having such a low range carry. It is so difficult to siege. But now as we get to this 20-minute mark, EDG, like we said, it's slow, it's methodical. They put on the pressure, they wait for these openings and take them time and again.
But they're also being very greedy with their backs. I'm curious how much gold iBoy is sitting on. Apparently just needed one more wave, but he should have another big item to help unlock a lot of Kai'Sa's power.
He did take the top tier 1 a moment ago as he's looking for that Gwynsu's. Already got the Adrenaline Rush Evolve and that Acathian Rain with Storm Razors and Pickaxe. Is also getting him the Evolve for 12 bullets. Let's see how he decides to finish off the rest of this build, because there is a lot of variety, whether you go for the on-hit or the crit with this AD Kai'Sa. But now, Baron has spawned. It's 10 kills to 5, and EDG are just controlling the map.
And quickly kind of zoning in on Kai'Sa's build again, you kind of just went through all the stats and all the power. Yes, she's still one item away from, you know, truly breaking out of her shell, but in tandem with Syndra right now, Edward Gaming are incredibly powerful. So they should be teaming up their Kai'Sa with their Syndra and trying to force a lot more of these fights. Now, FPX drew the line in the sand around the mid lane tower, which will definitely buy them a lot of time. It's helped get their kind of footing back into this, got them a big, deep breath, but I don't think they need to kill themselves over this, because if they lose that mid tower, it's immediately going to be the Baron. So the play has changed. I feel like FPX need to be a bit more hit and run, try to use the Realm Warp, try to use the Camille, and try to force some of these picks, whereas Edward Gaming, they want the big 5v5.
And this is such a trap for FPX as well, because Gimgoon, he has a propensity to split push absent-mindedly on the far side of the map. LWX doing the same thing on this Vayne. It's so difficult when you're playing Vayne not to do that sort of thing. So FPX need to be on point with their communication so that they don't find themselves split up, allowing themselves to overextend and give these openings to EDG.
I feel like who it's ultimately going to hurt is going to be Gimgoon. FPX have made the decision that they want to give the gold to Vayne. That makes sense. Might hold it though, because Crisp looking pretty frisky. But Gimgoon can't be in that side lane. He needs to be with this tower and with his team, which means the Cho'Gath is going to slip further and further behind. Where he once had a CS lead, he no longer does.
That's Crisp getting the knock-up onto iBoy. Realm Warp was just used by Cool as a bait, but the cast finds Crisp and knocks him in. LWX goes to the side, Crisp goes low, survives. Ignite ticking down. One more. Ooh, and he survives, but only barely, and still the turret is standing.
But Edward Gaming have their pick of the litter. They can either try to force this tower down, they can move into the Infernal, or more clearly, they're going to take both. They send Olaf to grab the Infernal for free. They should walk up, just tap, tap. And now we move into the Baron game.
Finally, it breaks down. Haro finishing off this dragon. Alex was on that side of the jungle, but decides not to overextend to look for a steal, as it's 2 dragons to 1, and all 3 outers broken down. LWX is getting there. He's got his Blade of the Ruined King. Looks like he's going for his own Guinsoo's to try and match that Kai'Sa. Double tap True Silver bolt damage is something that is absolutely terrifying for shredding through squishies, but it's going to take a long time before that Vayne can really match the damage of this 2-item Vayne just yet, as it is a 1,600 gold difference between the two of them, and another 1,200 gold in the mid lane for Scout.
I mean, ultimately, LWX needs to be able to survive the Olaf as well as the Gragas. He can't be caught out of position. He needs to stay out of range of the Syndra, or at least play around Scatter of the weak, and they need to make sure that either Camille is assisting him or Ryze is assisting him, but they need to keep someone off of that back line and then move front to back.
And look at how Scout's dealing with it. So very dirty. The Spellbinders.
He just wants to one-pop someone.
He pushes one button, then hits R on LWX, and LWX is dead, unless he has a Hexdrinker or a Maul of Malmortius, because he has no heal. He's sitting on the teleport.
And a huge issue is how far behind Crisp is. The fact that Mako already has access to his locket and Crisp does not, you need some sort of shield or something to assist there with the Vayne. Probably shouldn't go for a Zeke. I think you should go for a bit of some defensive.
Yeah. I will have to see what LWX does next, because again, even with the Syndra, that delays LWX's build if he decides to go for that Hexdrinker next, which gives iBoy the freedom and flexibility to go straight up into that next Zeal item and continue to scale into damage, whereas LWX has to choose, do I look to survive or do I look for the burst? But now EDG, they're converting their pressure game. They've taken all 3 outers, they set up total vision around the Baron, but they're going to look for a pick onto iBoy. He's pulled out of the Hextech ultimatum as FPX lunge forward as 5. Haro is getting slowed down. LWX finds the kill, flashes in. Ray is split over the wall. It's Scout and iBoy, but they find no way in, and still LWX finds an opening with the jungler of EDG dead.
And again, it's Edward Gaming that fumble around the Baron pit. The fact that Scout was split away, he couldn't get clear access into FPX, or particularly LWX. That's the guy that he wants to press R on, and now FPX on the offensive.
They're feigning yet another dive onto iBoy. Caught by the Rupture, Mako's ready with the Devour, but still the wave is cleared out as Crisp Hex flashes over the wall to continue to zone. And FPX still, they're finding these opportunities. This is not the perfect, clean play that we have seen from EDG in the past. This is why the team has been dropping down, as they are using the Abyssal Voyage up top. LWX, he's looking for the outplay, steps back in, looks for iBoy. If he can get the kill, he can destroy it. But a Cathian Rain on a solo target does so much damage, and iBoy finds himself with the kill.
The point-blank 360 no-scope as well from the W.
Yeah.
Massive damage there. 2v1. Take me in the 1v1.
And still EDG, now they're turning on to the Baron, no hesitation. Haro is back onto the map. That Vayne is dead. And now Alex is ready on the backside with his smite. Cool is gonna have to lead the charge for him. Banshees is down, 2200 health. Alex split, but the Baron picked up by EDG. Now they're looking to chase into a flight. They don't need to, but they want to, as FPX split, running for their base. They're going to get away with their lives as Alex narrowly gets away from Scout of the Week, but EDG, in the push and pull, they come up with the advantage.
And they didn't need to have the proper Baron setup, they just needed to find the pick. So Mako brute forcing that one a little bit. Has a bunch of gold, was able to make the early rotation, now has 2 support items to his name, and still, poor little Crisp. He's trying to get it, but it's just not obtainable right now. EDG from an item standpoint are miles ahead of FPX, much more than the gold difference. And now with Baron, they can try to convert that and make up for such a short range 80 carry.
And as you said, iBoy lines it up. 1, 2, 3. Acathian Rain auto Void Seeker was enough to get the kill. I'm not even sure he popped the plasma. I think he got up to 4 stacks. And it was just the raw damage there. Is Cool thinking of assassinating iBoy as he's split pushing alone on the opposite side of the map, prepping a wave. Ray does have teleport, but is grouped with his team, and now EDG are going to set their sights on breaking some tier 2s, of course after iBoy gets his necessary red buff.
Need to make sure that they're fully stacked, because of course if FPX decide to bite off more than they can chew, look for a hard engage here, the game will just end. At this point, FPX are in total damage control. Minimize what you're giving up. Ultimately, don't overcommit, especially with all of these waves that are going to be stacking into the side lanes, because EDG could very easily just end the game if enough members of FPX commit to these fights.
We're getting to some pretty big death timers at this point, so it is very risky. FPX still, they've got scaling. If they can outlast this, they can try to match that late game. Vayne and Ryze are no slouches, but as you said, the item advantage for EDG is so very powerful, and what's even more terrifying is seeing them use that item advantage to beat FPX back into their base.
It's also FPX not executing correctly. You can see that Crisp is now looking for the engagement, but I feel like this is about Alex and this is about Alistar.
Ooh,
and there goes Alex.
iBoy forcing Alex back. The flash, and that's the damage. Flash, Spellbinder, Power Unleashed is enough to kill LWX. That Vayne is dead, and so too is the inhibitor.
Doesn't look like Edward Gaming are going to try to stay. Although no, they actually are. Mako went and he grabbed the creep wave. He's trying to speed it up and pull it in.
This is going to be a 28-minute victory if EDG can close this out. Cool, trying to step forward, trying to get in range of the wave so we can clear it, but iBoy, he's doing lots of damage to Gimgoon. Shred through his health. Crisp steps in. Flash doesn't get the stun. iBoy still doing damage. A big 3-man knockup. There's the locket, and iBoy going real deep. Finds Gimgoon, but he's on the fountain. He's slowed down. Cannot find the kill, though, but he provides enough of a distraction for his team to finish off the Nexus turrets. He finally dies to Cool, as now Mako is body blocking, but he too will die as EDG overextend, bearing the Nexus of FPX.
Edward Gaming or just Crisp, as there's a TP from Vayne.
Yeah, LWX flanking from behind. He's found Scout, pins him to the wall. 1, 2, 3, the auto cleanse, and he gets the kill. Ray pinned down, a good cast to delay it, but FPX swing back recklessly and find themselves a kill. Nobody's defending the Nexus.
I'm just gonna say, if I'm Mako, I'm turning to iBoy and I'm just sucker punching him as hard as I can in the arm. What are you doing? That could have been game in for EDG. And yes, LWX, everything is on fire. Their entire base are in tatters. It should be easy enough for EDG to capitalize on all of the global gold that they just received and then walk it into the base. But these are mistakes that you cannot be making right before playoffs.
And look at that player cam. iBoy knows it. He's still got a bit of that smirk that he was showing before getting into that game, but it is heavily dampened, as he knows, hey, if that play worked out, we could have done it. We could have ended the game. The dive into the fountain nearly.
But just look at kind of what the difference of mentality is. Scout's off to the side, and usually I criticize Scout's positioning in team fights because he usually only focuses on kills. He was doing all of the zoning. He was perfectly positioned on the Syndra, making sure that FPX never got a flank onto them, and it's iBoy who just decides to throw out the playbook when they are clearly saying, position for the towers, force them off. If we take the fight, we'll kill them. He dives in. He puts Edward Gaming at a massive disadvantage and incorrect positioning. LWX then teleports into the backline and cleans up a lot of those kills.
Now, despite even that fight at the Nexus and the massive gold advantages you're about to see on your screen with all of the damage done in that fight, it's still a huge setup from EDG to close out the game. Remember, the Nexus is bare for FPX. Baron's going to be respawning in a few minutes, and EDG still have got a massive item advantage over FPX. 3 full items completed out of iBoy. He's got himself another BF sword and a pickaxe as he looks for Infinity Edge. Full crit seems to be on the docket for him, whereas LWX, he's sitting on 2 items and then 2 half items with a QSS and that Hex Drinker. The only person who can match the damage is Cool, and we've already seen what Syndra can do to that big ol' Rise.
What a shit-eating green. He just said his player cam. I'm going to Infinity Edge, boys. I got it.
He's thinking about it. He really is. But here's the slow siege. EDG, again, even without the playbook, they're still controlling the game. Crisp over the wall, 2-man knock up, but iBoy snared. Mako with the save, gets knocked up. Ruptured, forced to flash. iBoy's in the back. There it goes, the Hextech ultimatum. Alex is dead. Crisp looks for another opening in. LWX steps up, looks and chases down Scout, but dies as Ray comes to his rescue. iBoy will still go down, though, as Cool has been firing nonstop in the back. Somebody has got to deal with this Rise.
And suddenly things are looking a little bit more hairy, Dom. The Nexus is still open and bare. LGD, Edward Gaming, excuse me, doing their best LGD impression, could have waited for these super creeps to hit the Nexus. They could have forced FPX into the hard decision making. Now, I will give FPX credit, and against Edward Gaming's composition, they have so many tools for hard engage. They have a Camille, they have an Alistar. It is very hard to force that play because FPX can just flip the switch and look for the hard engage, which is exactly what happened. But ultimately, EDG shouldn't have been in this position. Look at where the mid creep wave is. Why are you that close? Just back up and wait for it.
Very reckless play, and again, it's iBoy's positioning in these fights that force EDG to overcommit. Mako forcing the flash in order to save him the first time, and then he immediately goes right back in to try again. Certainly, if, again, like we said earlier, if he gets the kills, it's flashy, it's stylish, it ends the game. But if it doesn't, it gives more openings for FPX to try to get back into this.
And you talked about it. The hyperscaling potential of a Vayne and Rise must be respected, because while EDG's composition is excellent at diving into the backline between Kai'Sa, between Gragas, between Olaf, diving into a Cho'Gath, Rise, and Vayne is real scary.
Oh, yeah. Now, Baron has spawned. Super minions are being controlled in the mid wave by FPX as they're pushing up to try and take some vision back. They've got a wave slow pushing for them bottom. Plenty of opportunity to engage. EDG, though, might be trying to do the same as they reclaim wave control. Though EDG do have some time with top wave slow pushing here, it comes down to the decision-making, the shot calling of these two teams. FPX, they're running on limited time, but they can stay here.
But I love the fact that FPX have chosen to go the mid lane. Now, what EDG are doing is that they're showing they have complete vision control. There's no trinkets available for FPX in terms of blue trinkets, so this is on a hunch.
Ray and Mako are body blocking. Baron picked up as Alex gets sent onto a journey to try and take it. Actually, it was only Crisp who took the journey, and he goes down. Now Gimgoon in the front. Alex follows up. LWX and Rise doing some damage, but a double kill. Gimgoon gets bursted solo. It's down to the 2 carries. LWX does what he can, but with no tank in front of him is forced to run. iBoy finally gets the chase he wanted, and even Mako will say, not this time. You're not going to dive into the back finally for the 3rd time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But EDG, they take the win. They're going to run down this mid lane, drop the inhibitor, and take this game 1 against FPX.
It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't as clean as it needed to be, but ultimately, Edward Gaming did get it done. Now, it's a best of 3. We're going to game 2, and hopefully EDG can be a bit more threatening this time around.
They're still showing that characteristic control, that characteristic strength, setting up with these massive plays in multiple lanes. But it's down to the execution of the plays. We can see the playbook in advance, and it is absolutely beautiful to watch it happen, but they still need to stick to their guns and follow through on what they set out on in that 34-minute victory.
And ultimately, you look at 34 minutes, you look at that gold graph, you say nothing went wrong there. That was just a picture-perfect game for Edward Gaming. Look at the damage done by iBoy. He probably had a stellar standout performance, but we're focusing on the cracks. This is the last best of 3, 2 more best of 3s that Edward Gaming will face. FPX as well as Snake Esports. They want to take that 2nd place spot, and either way, they're either going to be on the RNG side of the bracket or they're going to be on the Invictus Gaming side of the bracket. So gold graphs like that, performances like that, won't cut it.
Absolutely, and still there is opportunity for them to try and grow. Of course, they're returning with Mako, who just got to work with the Asian Games 2018 Victor roster.
RNG.
And all of those coaches involved in that setup. You have to look at the conversations that these organizations are having with the players to set themselves up into the next round of playoffs. Because again, we keep on saying EDG is a team that's focusing on the future. They need to focus on the now if they want to try to get deep into playoffs and look for that world spot. Because we very well could have the first year that EDG do not go to Worlds before us. This is not locked down for them by a long shot.
I do want to say, though, that Edward Gaming have probably the easiest route into Worlds, outside maybe RNG, simply because they were in the finals for spring. So just based off of championship points, if EDG managed to make it back to finals, which if you've never seen the LPL before, is like a 99% likelihood chance that it's going to happen, because it always does, it means that they're given their ticket automatically. If they're forced down into the regional qualifiers, that's where things get a bit more dicey.
Of course, the point standing will be determined by Rogue Warriors as well, trying to take their own final spot on their own side of the bracket, as it's just going to be an uphill battle both ways. But still, this matchup is to be determined because FPX, they have shown their landing phase was a little bit weak because of the early snowball that we saw set up by EDG. But they saw the weaknesses in EDG that we saw as well. They saw the openings and the opportunities. And if EDG continue to show these weaknesses, I feel like FPX is a team that's going to continue to pounce on them. And that brings them that much closer to winning this series and resetting it. As this, tragically, is not that. This is FPX investing bottom, but over-investing.
And it's about who is kind of leading the charge for FPX. It felt like time and time again that it was someone like Crisp, that it was someone like Gimgoon, when it should have been Alex. We spent all of that time really building up this idea about this is about mid-jungle and who's going to show up on the day. And frankly, Alex isn't showing up for me. When you're on such an important pick like Camille, especially in the LPL, you can't have that type of performance where you're non-existent in the early game. You have Rise Camille, level 1 through 5 against the Syndra, force the cleanse, try to kill her, make sure that she doesn't automatically get to that level 6 power spike, and then the ability to walk into your jungle for free, because damage ultimate versus non-damage ultimate on Rise, I wonder who's going to win there.
And it came down to the very first decision that we saw him make immediately after the red buff invade by Edward Gaming. Instead of trying to match it and red buff invade Haro on the opposite side of the map, he played it safe. He played it for the Scuttle Crab, the blue buff, the Gromp, taking it slow to making sure that he could scale up and that there was no chance of it being upset. But somebody who did not play it safe, as you laugh into your microphone, it's iBoy.
I can't believe they gave him man of the match. Naturally, you can see in the scoreline 8, 3, and 5, the damage percentage. It's hard not to give it to him from a numbers perspective, but let's be honest, he almost threw that game.
A couple of times, too. Still, good performance from iBoy overall. He took the strong laning phase as expected, taking that advantage off of the early first blood and running it back against LWX, moving just a little bit faster in these fights, whether or not that's due to Mako's shot calling, moving in with the Abyssal Voyage, or his ability to killer instinct into the back line.
I'm going to give you a tip. It was because of Mako. If anyone deserved the man of the match, it was definitely Mako. He was sitting 3-0-5 in the lane phase. He set up all of the kills. He was 100% kill participation for a lot of that game before it started to branch out. And then when they did make big picks, it was this guy who saved the day. Now, this is the turning, the tilting point. You're going to see that iBoy is going to step way too far forward. He's going to need Mako to save the day, grab him, gobble him up, flash him back into safety. He's like, no, child. We fight front to back here. But you can't fight front to back against this composition because Rise is doing so much damage at this point.
I mean, Kaisa doesn't even look too happy at fighting front to back. She had the opportunity to stay in the back and work through the Cho'Gath's health bar, but after getting pulled out from Mako, goes right back in and flashes on top of that. So again, he's such a stylish player. He's such a cocky player in how he takes these kills, how he tries to push back. But sometimes that cockiness, when paired with the tempered, slow, controlled play of EDG, take that slow out of there. Sometimes it's very fast play. That controlled play from EDG sometimes set the whole playbook on fire, and FPX, they might be happy to take a chaotic brawl in Game 2 if the opportunity is presented to them.
I just hope that it's Alex in particular. I just want to see him kind of change up his performance, find that fire, because I feel like that was the real low point for FPX in this series so far. Now, they're not out of it. They can run this back, win the next 2 games in a row, and then put themselves in a good position. You heard Cool talk at the very beginning of the day that he just wants to get a single point off of EDG, which means they do need to take a game. But ultimately, it kind of looks like they rolled over and they've almost accepted their death already.
Yeah, and that's something that you absolutely cannot take against Edward Gaming. This is a team that will take every single advantage that they can and run it out to close out the match, as we just saw. But with all of that, we're going to go and take a quick break and get ready for that Game 2 between FunPlus Phoenix and Edward Gaming.